One thing I want to talk to you before we go too much further is about the different qualities of different materials. There are standards that have been set out to the companies of information that they need to put on tubes, and this is very important in terms of us having an understanding of what's in our tube and how that colour will behave, as opposed to maybe that same colour in a different brand. Now, one thing I do encourage you all to do when you're playing with things of colour is to be buying the best quality that you can. When you're buying the best quality, you're paying money for the good quality pigments. And there's two aspects to that. The first aspect is light fastness. So with your better quality paints, you're more likely to be dealing with pigments that are not fugitive, meaning that they don't fade or change over time. And the other aspect is that often in the better quality paints, if the tube says that it's, as I say, for instance, a tube of a colour called cobalt blue, that it is actually the cobalt blue pigment in the paint, as opposed to some of your cheaper ranges, which will put substitutes into that range. In terms of understanding what's going on and looking for those two aspects, I just have here a range of a few different things. I primarily use sort of the Tarlin's range of paint, so I can show you on their paint what you're looking for. So for instance, here we have a tube of Rembrandt watercolour, light oxide red or light red or English red as that colour is sometimes called. And you'll notice here up here they have a system of little crosses like this. Now in theirs they have this system of crosses. Other brands have different systems. Sometimes they're little asterisks or stars. And what you're looking there is their light fastness. So in Rembrandt they have 1, 2 or 3 star crosses. 3 crosses is the highest light fastness. And I know in their range of paints, in their Rembrandt range, all of their paints will have the 3 stars or the 3 crosses. You deliberately use paints across their range in Rembrandt that are all light fast. The other important bit of information, as I said, is the pigments that they use. And so, I mean, across all good quality paints or good quality materials, they should give you an idea of it. So, for instance, here with this, so this is a light red oxide, so the same as the watercolour I showed you before, but this is an oil. There's our stars up the top there, a little bit hard to see, the tube's a bit crushed, but 3 little crosses. Now, other little bit of information, this is the difficult one. This is where often it's printed very smallly, but you're looking for this here, which is pigments. And this will list the pigments that are in this paint. So you've got pigments here, and then you'll see PR101. Now, what that is P means pigment, R means red, and 101 is this particular red pigment, which is in this paint. Which is PR101 is I think it's like it's an earth red pigment. What I think is important and why I think it's important to know this is that sometimes some colours are made up by using lots and lots of different pigments to make that colour. Now, one thing I'm very aware of is that I try to buy paints that are monopigmented, so they're colours that only have one pigment in them. When you're buying colours that have more than one pigment in them, when they mix with other colours, they will create mixes that are quite different to what monopigmented paints are. As I said, you will even find it on, so I mean, this is a tub of printing ink for relief printmaking, for lino cuts and things like that. And even on these, you will then start to find some of this information. So here you've got the pigment, which is a naphthol red in this case, which is PR9, so pigment red 9. It's giving you the vehicle, so that's burnt plate oil, which is what makes it oil or acrylic, etc. And here they have a light fastness with a number 2, so they have a number system that relates to their light fastness. So I'd need to look up their literature either on the website or elsewhere to give me an idea of what that actually means, but it's there, that information is there. The other, here you can see here with this range of coloured pencils, often here in the lid, so these are the Lyra pencils. In the lid here you can see they've actually got a system of light fastness by stars again. They don't necessarily list the pigments, and that's one thing with coloured pencils, is often the brands don't list the pigments that they use, but you can if you go on to often their websites and find their literature. You will often find information about the pigments that they're using in those pencils there. And then this is the same across pastels. You'll often find, if you look on the information on the label, you will find information about what's in your paint and whether it's light fast or not. So the last part of this video is that I want to introduce you to the first chart that you're going to do. So these are examples of the versions of the chart that you're going to do, and can give you some different ideas of doing it. And of course these are in different mediums as well. So here you can see one that I've done in gouache, and then they slowly pastel out each colour. So in this case I'm adding more white. Here's an example with some done in oil paint. So these are a lot of our earth yellows and reds, etc., which again we'll talk more about some of these things in later videos. But basically what I want you to see is how the colour is starting at full strength as it comes out of the tube, and then in these last two cases is that I'm adding white and it pastels it out. And these are some examples here in watercolour. The difference between these and these ones here in watercolour is there's just the one step, but you could do more than one step, and it's not by adding white, it's by adding water and watering it out in as many steps as you can. Now the idea of this exercise, and that's a good example here with the oil, is to try and stretch it out, or to get some big changes happening quite quickly if you do it on a smaller scale. So it's when you see it out on a bigger format like this, and this is a particularly good one for oil or acrylic, is if you do it in big long strings like this, you also can see the strength of the colour, that some pigments are stronger than others. So that, for instance, like here, this would be probably what's that, light red oxide. So I mean that was the one I was showing you before, and you can see here, no matter how much white you add, it still hangs on, and it doesn't disappear very easily, as opposed to some of these other colours over here in the yellows. Or even here, this is a colour called raw umber, I think, or is it greenish umber? Can't read my writing. Yes, it is, it's raw umber. So you can see how raw umber very quickly disappears and the white takes over. So it starts to give you an idea of the strength of those colours. Now, this is sort of the size. Now, I'd suggest to you not doing it as big as what I have done there. I would suggest doing it to an A4 size. And this is quite a good set out of it, of the colours here. 4 yellows, 4 reds, and 4 blues. At full strength as it comes out of the tube, and then with white added, white added, white added. And even on these smaller scale ones with not as many steps as the last one that you saw, you can still see the difference in these boxes here, where some of the colours are still quite evident and quite strong. So what I want you to do, I'll come to this chart on its own like that, is these are the colours that I recommend people in normal circumstances to have for this class. Now, we're in a situation that maybe you're not comfortable going out and buying paints and things like that. So what I want you to do is to be looking at your colours and finding the closest equivalents that you can if you're not wanting to go and purchase more colours. And you'll find probably in your sets that you'll have, or colours that you've got, that you'll have colours very, very close to a lot of these. So here across the top, we've got 4 yellows. The first one here being cadmium yellow deep, yellow ochre, cadmium yellow light, and lemon yellow. Sometimes this can also be called cadmium lemon. When we go here to our reds, again, we've got 4 reds, starting here with vermilion, cadmium red medium, Indian red, and this one is called permanent matter deep. In this would be done in a Rembrandt oil, but this commonly would be known as alizarin crimson or a crimson in your paints. And the last row here is our blue. So we've got ultramarine blue, cobalt blue, cerulean blue, and Prussian blue. Now, one that you might come across that's very similar to Prussian blue is a colour called phthalo blue, and that would be an appropriate equivalent in this case for this one here. So as I said, look in the paints that you've got if you're not wanting to extend your colour range at this moment by going out and purchasing some colours. And I want you, this is the first exercise for you to do, is to find the closest equivalents you can to those 4 yellows, 4 reds and 4 blues, and then paint the colour down in its full strength, and then either diluting it with white paint, or in the case of watercolour, with water, step it out. Getting lighter would be the term that we would use, in as many steps as you want to do. So you can see here, this ends up being quite a neat little chart if you keep it to A4 size and with this number of steps. Just make sure if you're adding white is that with such a small amount of steps that you add quite a bit of white each time into your base colour so that you get some very definite steps like that. Good luck, and as always, if you have any trouble, shoot me through an email or if you've got any questions. Otherwise, I shall see you in one of the Zoom meetings next week. Take care and speak to you soon.